A lot of times during an interview for accountant position, in addition to the soft skills, you might be asked technical questions on how would you do certain things as an accountant. In this video, I'm going to share with you typical technical questions being asked during an accountant interview. We will look at how to do basic operations in QuickBooks and look at some accounting concepts you might be asked about during the interview. We will also look at how to use Excel to import credit cards data, analyze income and expenses data, and also how to do conditional formatting and sort and filter data, as well as do a lot of other things. I'm also going to give you some tips specific for accountant position, so make sure you don't miss those if you want to get hired as accountant. Let's start with the typical tasks you may need to do in QuickBooks as accountant. Sometimes you might be required and being asked to set up a new company in QuickBooks. To create a new company in QuickBooks, you need to click Create New Company button. If you're setting up for yourself, then you need to select the first option. If you're setting up for somebody else, you need to select the second option. In my case, I'm just going to select for myself and click Start Setup. QuickBooks requires you to connect your new company setup to QuickBooks Online account. I'm going to enter my credentials and click Sign In. In the next step, you would need to enter all company details. So I'm going to enter Online Bookstore, and obviously you would need to enter your own name for your own company. For the industry, you have a lot of different options. You can choose among industries, and based on the industry that you choose, it will create different types of account. So in my case, I'm going to select retail shop or online e-commerce and click OK. For the business type, I also have a lot of choices. Based on US company setup, you can choose between options presented here. So you would need to choose what type of business you have registered with your state. I'm going to click Sole Proprietorship and click OK. You would need to also enter your employer identification number in the required format. Next step is to enter business address. And once you've entered zip code, state, and country is selected US, you need to click Create Company button. QuickBooks completes all required steps and new company has been created. Frequently, you might need to set up a new expense account in QuickBooks. To create a new account in QuickBooks, you would need to navigate to Company, Chart of Accounts, and then click Account, and then select the type of account you're trying to create. You create New, and here there are income accounts, expense accounts, then you have fixed asset, bank loan, credit card, or equity account. In our case, we'd like to create a credit card account. So we selected the credit card, and now we need to click Continue. And here we can just choose account name. So we choose name of the company with which the credit card account is open, and then we will just choose the last digits of the account. And then we click Save and Close. And at this point, we're not going to connect it to any online accounts. And you see that the new Chase credit card account has been created. Frequently, you might be required to enter transactions into General Ledger right in QuickBooks. To make a General Journal entry, you need to navigate to Company, Make General Journal Entries menu item. And here you would need to decide what type of entry are you making. In my case, I will be entering parking fee from the credit card and connecting it to automobile expenses account. To do that, I need to select the first day account, and I have a credit card account. In the credit section, you choose the amount. In my case, it's $5. For the memo, you write the memo of how you would like to be reminded of this transaction. So it might be parking for the client visit. Then you can say name, and you can say add new for the vendor if you'd like to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip this item. And then here in the next section, I'm going to pick relevant expenses for the category. And in my case, it's going to be automobile expense. So I'm going to match it with $5 and then copy and paste the memo. And once you're done, you click Save. You either can save and close or save and new. In my case, I'm going to click Save and Close. And here you see that the entry from the Chase credit card was added as a $5 amount on the credit card. And it also should be reflected in automobile expenses account. And we see entry here in amount of $5. Sometimes you may need to set up a new income account in QuickBooks. To create new income account, you need to navigate to the chart of accounts in QuickBooks by going to Company, Chart of Accounts, and then you click on the account at the bottom left corner and click New Account. QuickBooks offers you different options here. You need to choose Income Account and then define what type of income account you will be creating. For example, this is a bookstore, online e-commerce bookstore QuickBooks file, and one of the services that you will be offering to the client to get additional income might be consulting service. So you need to type consulting service and then click Save and Close. And you see that QuickBooks added consulting service as the new income account. Now let's look at some definitions and key accounting concepts you might be asked during the interview. Frequently, you might be asked, what are the typical applications and computer systems used for accounting? Intuit provides QuickBooks applications, which is most commonly used to maintain accounting transactions. There's a desktop version of QuickBooks, and there is also an online version of QuickBooks. Other applications available are Microsoft Dynamics, and large companies also use applications like NetSuite, SAP, and QuickBooks Enterprise. A lot of times you might be asked the question, what is the double entry bookkeeping? Double entry bookkeeping is an accounting principle that every debt transaction has a corresponding credit transaction. In double entry bookkeeping system, if one of the accounts is debited, second account will be credited for the same amount. Often you might be asked, what is the difference between account payables and account receivables? Account payable represents the amount company owes because it purchased goods or services from another vendor or supplier. Accounts receivable represents the amount company has right to collect based on the goods or services it sold to somebody else. The biggest difference between account payable and account receivable is that payables is a liability and account receivable is an asset to the company. One of the questions asked during the interview might be, what is the basic accounting equation? The main accounting equation defines how assets are related to liabilities and owner's equity. And the formula is assets equals liability plus shareholders' equity. And shareholders' equity, a lot of times also called owner's equity. One of the interview questions I hear frequently is, what are the different branches of accounting? Instead of giving you the answer though, I'd like you to answer this question in the comments for this video. Please post in the comments and I'll check and let you know if you answered correctly. Sometimes you might be asked, what is financial accounting? Financial accounting is the original form of accounting process. The main purpose of financial accounting is to calculate profit and loss for the business during a certain period, which could be quarterly, annually, or on a different schedule. Since management needs to know what is the current financial positioning for the company, financial accounting helps answer these questions. Let's look at one typical question that is being asked. What is cost accounting? Cost accounting deals with evaluating of the cost efficiency for the organization. It calculates costs by considering a lot of different factors that contribute to production and output or the process of organizing the output. The objective of the cost accounting is to help management to fix prices and controlling the costs, and ultimately improving profitability for the organization. One of the questions frequently asked as part of the interview is, what is managerial accounting? Managerial accounting is the branch of accounting which provides management answers to the questions to help improve administration of the business. Managerial accounting helps controls various aspects of the business. With managerial accounting, management is able to make quick business decisions using the information provided. Management can also look at budgets and projected cash flows to help plan for the future. One of the frequent questions asked as part of accounting interview is how to estimate bad debts. There are multiple ways you can estimate bad debts, and the most popular ways are look at the percentage of outstanding accounts, as well as aging analysis and percentage of credit sales. A lot of times, as an accountant, you might be required to import data from the credit card or bank account statement. Let's look at how you can do it in Microsoft Excel. Importing credit card statement is very easy. You just need to download CSV file from your credit card provider, and typically they provide it for business cards. And then once downloaded, this is the file I'm looking at right here on the desktop. I can preview the file. Typically you can open it with Notepad, and this is how the file looks. It has a transaction, it has a description of what transaction is, and it has the amount. And CSV stands for comma-separated values. And here you have a comma in between one of these three segments. So to import this into Excel, you have multiple ways to do it. You can just open it in Excel, because the first and default option is open it in Excel. And once Excel opens up this data, you can just format it and make it best for yourself. What do you want to do? In my case, somehow date did not have a year, so you might want to change the date value, and by default I think it assigned the most recent year, but in my case it might be a different year, because CSV file did not have specific year in the entries. And then you can look up what kind of data your provider shares with you and adjust accordingly. Very frequently as an accountant, you would need to bring data from multiple sources and provide consolidated income statement. Let's review how you can do it in Microsoft Excel using latest feature of Excel called Excel Tables. To calculate budget with Excel Tables, let's first look at the data. We have Excel spreadsheet with the imports from ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning, and it contains three tabs. We're looking at Company Operating Expenses tab, which has three columns: operating expenses, estimated, and actuals. We also have company personnel expenses, and they're structured in a very similar way. They have expense categories, estimated, and then actuals. And then we have company's revenue, which is a revenue category, and then estimated and actuals. Couple considerations and definitions here. Budget is typically consists of the variance between estimated value, which was estimated ahead of time, and the actual, which was actually spent and tracked. So typically the reason to reconcile budget is when we want to look how well we estimated and how well our actuals actually match estimated values. Another big consideration here, all values here are positive, even though revenues typically adds to the company's value and expenses typically considered to be negative. So ideally what we should do, we should look at having revenue as a positive sign values and personal expenses and operating expenses being the negative sign values. Because data in all three tabs comes as Excel ranges, first step we need to do is convert all the data into Excel table. To do that, let's select all the data. In the first step, company operating expenses, and you can do conversion in multiple ways. You can click Insert Table, and it confirms the range that we want to convert, and we say yes, and it converted it into a table. Let's do the same thing for other tabs, and now let's do a different way. I'm going to use shortcut Control-T, and it prompts me with the same confirmation box, and conversion is complete. And let's do exactly the same thing for the revenues, company's revenue. So we selected the range and click Table, Convert to Table, and now we have all three items converted into Excel table. As you can see, these tables do not have total values. So for tables, it's easy to add this. You just need to select the table, go into Table Design on the menu, and click Add Total Row. And we need to do it for all the values here. You see the table uses subtotal, and 109 is the sum formula. So we can copy this value. To do that, we can just do copy and then paste it here. And now we have both totals. With Excel tables, it does not support relative references as it does with ranges. So what we have in the formula, we're still referencing total from the actual column. So we need to change it and refer to it as estimated. And Excel provides us with some options. And now we clicked on this, and now we have recalculated value for estimated. We need to do the same thing for personal expenses and operating expenses. So let's go to first company personnel expenses. Then we'll navigate to Table Design and add a total row. And we would need to do the same thing here. We can either retype it, or we can use Control-C on the keyboard. That's what I'm going to do, Control-V. And we need to change it to estimated. So now we have calculations for personal expenses, and let's add total row for company operating expenses now. And let's copy and paste values and replace actual with estimated. To calculate actual budget, we need to get the summary of total values from each one of these tabs into the new tab. So I'm going to create a new tab, and I'll set it up with 3 columns: description, estimated, and actual. To operate effectively, we need to give each one of the tables we created a name. So for example, if we go to table design, the name for company revenue, let's use the same name as the name of the tab. So we called it company revenue. We will call company personnel expenses as the table with the same name. And we will give the third table name company operating expenses. I'm going to keep the names of all 3 tables in Notepad to have them handy, and I'll show you why in a second. One of the things that Excel allows you to do when you use Excel tables is that you don't have to necessarily reference tab by name. Table name is valid across all Excel spreadsheets, and you can just reference it in your calculations, and that's one huge advantage of using Excel tables. In the summary table, I added 3 rows: revenue, personal expenses, and operating expenses. Now let's bring in the data from company revenue. To do that, I'm going to use the name of the table, and that's all I need. I can just say equals, and then this is the name of the table. Open double square brackets, and Excel recognizes that this is the table that we already have in another tab. You just need to know that it's somewhere in the spreadsheet. You don't necessarily need to reference tab by name. And then here, what we would like to do, we would like to ensure that we're getting totals. So pound all brings all the data, and you can reference all the data. In our case, we're only interested in totals. So let's reference totals here. Close first square bracket, and then use comma and open second square bracket. And we're interested for column B in the estimated values. And I'm going to close both square brackets and hit enter and expand it a little bit, and the amount is for revenue estimated as $734,290. Let's verify that. We go back to company revenue, and the amount matches exactly. Now let's do the same thing for other relevant categories of revenue and personnel expenses. Last step in creating a budget is understanding the totals. Right now, we can just add the sum functions and do auto sum for these 3 rows, but it's not going to be accurate, because what we need to account for is the fact that revenue is a positive amount, and typically expenses represented as a negative amount. So first step to do is to change the sign on expenses. To do that, we need to select an expense and add a minus sign, and then make it negative for all the expenses. Once this is done, we can add the sum formula. Now let's do some minor tweaks. We can name the tab as budget, and we can add formatting to this table. We can choose one of the many styles available in Excel. We can also add total here as the calculated value for row 5. You might want to consider changing the header row to use a different color. Now let's look at the budget itself. It looks like the estimated value was estimated as negative between revenue and operating expenses. And the actual actually was positive, so which means that we've earned more money than we spend. Here we've estimated that we spend more than we earn. So it turned out positive, and that's basically the conclusion we can come out with by looking at all these numbers from the company revenue, personal expenses, and operating expenses that we started with. Very frequently, you might be asked to demonstrate your knowledge of conditional formatting in Excel. Keep in mind that questions might be asked specifically related to conditional formatting, or they also could be asked as a business question. For example, you might be asked to highlight all transactions with negative profit margins. To do this, you would use conditional formatting feature in Microsoft Excel. For example, the question might be, how can you quickly highlight all transactions with negative profit in Excel? To do that, you need to better understand the data. To better understand the data, you need to understand the columns and the meaning of each column in the source data. For example, the data we're looking at is the transactional data, and it represents sales transactions for a company. Each line item here represents specific transaction, and the column O represents the profit for each of these transactions. If we scroll down, we will see that most of the values are positive, but there are some negative values here, which we would need to highlight through conditional formatting feature of Microsoft Excel. To highlight all transactions with negative profit, we first need to select the data. Once data is selected, on the Home tab, there is a conditional formatting feature, and in our case, we will be highlighting the cells, and we'll be highlighting cells with the values less than specific amount. Our specific amount is 0. By default, Excel calculated something else. So once I replace that value with 0, and then choose the type of color, I think light red fill with dark red text is a very good choice to highlight negative amounts. So we will use the default choice here, but there are other choices. You should keep it in mind. Sometimes question might ask to use specific color, and then click OK. It seems that nothing happened on the screen, but on the first page there are no transactions. But if we scroll down, then we see that transactions with the negative amount have been highlighted with the red. We can also, to emphasize this, that these are dollar amounts or amounts in other currency, we can select the column and then use the dollar sign to make it clear that this is a negative profit. Sometimes you might be asked how to sort and filter data in Excel. Since data in Excel could be stored as table or as range, we will look at the both options and how to sort and filter it using both options in Microsoft Excel. Data could be sorted and filtered in Excel based on how it is stored in Microsoft Excel. Since data could be stored as a range or as a table, it will be processed differently. For example, to sort and filter data stored in the range, all you need to do is select the top row, assuming that you will have headers for the data range in the first row. And then all you need to do is click Sort and Filter, and then add a filter. Once you edit a filter, you will have different options of how you would want to process the data. For example, what you can do, you can select Sort A to Z, Sort Z to A, Sort by color, and use a lot of different sorting and filtering options. You can apply this algorithm to any column as long as it has the header and as long as it has this drop-down, which is automatically added once you add a quick filter. If your data is stored as Excel table, which could be verified when you click on any cell, and if you see Table Design tab added, then it means your data is stored as a table. And typically you can navigate here and see the table name in this tab. When data is stored as a table, you automatically have the drop-down boxes for sorting and filtering added, and you can just use them inside Excel table to process the data and to do sorting and filtering. Thanks for watching. Hope you've learned something, and if this video made you smile, it means I did something right. I wanted to share with you that I've been unemployed myself many times in my career and know how stressful it is to look for a job. One of the most helpful things for me was maintaining positive outlook on things. I wanted to give you a boost of energy in your journey of job search and getting ready for the interview and assessment test. If you like this content, please give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.